My sister-in-law, Marilyn, was driving on the Lodge Freeway in Detroit with her husband, my brother, and their 3 children in the back seat. Now, she is a hardcore, linear, left-brain skeptic. I mean, you had to show me. Otherwise, it doesn't exist for her. Medicine was her model. Anything that has to do with the mind, very skeptical. This car jumped the guardrail on the other side, on the southbound lane, and landed right in her face at 60 miles an hour. She saw the wheels coming and land right there. Every bone in her face was broken. Her kidneys were punctured. She had internal bleeding and was in intensive care for 13 weeks. They took her into the hospital unconscious. And no one thought that she was going to survive the night. She was really in bad shape. And they performed surgery on her for 14 hours. And there was a team of surgeons, 6 of them. And they were talking during the surgery. As you can imagine, for 14 hours you would be talking. My sister-in-law reported to me in 1971, when I was 31 years old, and just sort of starting on this path, that she watched the entire surgery. She said, "Wayne, you're the only person, you're the only weird one in the family. All right? And you're weird enough to believe this, you know." So anyway, Marilyn said to me, "Wayne," she said, "what happened is that I left my body." And she said, "I went up to the corner of the room. I was surrounded by this light, and I was in the presence of God." It was like a consciousness. It was like, I can't describe it because it doesn't have boundaries. It didn't have form, but it was a magnificent light. And I was there, and there was this tunnel. And I could have gone through this tunnel, and I had the choice, and it was so peaceful, and it felt so good. It was the most blissful I've ever been in my life. And she said, and I watched the surgeons performing on me, and I watched them working on my body, knowing that that wasn't me. When she came out of it after 14 hours of surgery, there were 2 of the surgeons, they were voting on whether they should continue this or not, or whether they should just pull the plug. She had very little heartbeat at all, and she was so badly punctured internally, and her bleeding was so bad, and there was infection and so on, that they just didn't think she would, and if she did survive, they thought it was. So 2 of them were saying, let's just give up on this, you know, and go on to other people. The 4 doctors prevailed, who said that we really believe that we can save this person. And Marilyn then made it. She had 3 little children, my 2 nephews and 1 niece, were in the backseat. They were just little children at the time, 2, 4, and 5. And Marilyn decided that she could re-enter, even though it was painful and didn't want to do it. She was given, it's like given the choice. And she went back. And when she came out of it, she told the surgeons which ones had said, let's give up on it, and which ones had said, let's stay with it. And she had gave them word for word what they had said in this event. And she said it was at that time that I became really, truly aware. And she said since then, she has gotten to meet some of what they call NDEers, near-death experiences. And that everybody who has this near-death experience, Raymond Moody writes about it, has the same thing to report. And that is that when they come back, and they do it reluctantly, they have what we call the big picture. And since then, I mean, you wouldn't believe my sister-in-law. She is the calmest, most loving, easiest going. You can't get to her. You can't get to her. She has an inner candle flame that never flickers, though the worst goes before her. And the worst is my brother. And he goes before her all the time. And he's very linear. He's an insurance, he's a wonderful, loving, beautiful person. All of his stuff is motivated out of caring and concern. He wants to always, but he wants to do so damn much that it becomes like, all right, enough, I got the map, all right, yeah, but do you know which turn to make? Yeah, I know. And it's half an hour of that kind of. And she just sits there and just reads. And when there's a family squabble and people get themselves all upset, she just picks up a book and just excuses herself. And she goes over into the corner, and the kids say, you know, when someone will be around, their friends, they say, what's with your mom? And they all say, oh, she's got the big picture. It's like having the big picture. And these people, all of them report when they come back from that, they have this like near-death experience. it's like tension and stress and anxiety and fear and all of that stuff that occupies so much of our lives is just gone. It's just not a part of the consciousness any longer. My suggestion is that we don't have to have that kind of traumatic event happen to our form to understand the universal principles and to surrender to them and to make them work every day in our life. That we don't have to go there. That we can unmuddle all of this metaphysical psychobabble, jargons kind of stuff and begin to live the spiritual life and have the understanding that we are truly spiritual beings having a human experience, and that the quality of that human experience is only available to us through our thoughts, through our mind, through our divine connection. And that whatever your religious belief, whatever label you place on yourself, try not to think of yourself as Christian. Try to be Christ-like, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Try not to think of yourself as Jewish, but be Jehovah-like, or Buddha-like, or Muhammad-like. These were not people who were asking anyone to deify idols and wooden deities and an orthodoxy. But instead we're talking about kindness and love and forgiveness and gentleness and spirit, and that we're all connected, and you begin to live that way. And it's really quite an easy thing to do.
Non-erroneous zone people, which I now call NEZ, N-E-Z, are different from the normals in our world. While they look very much like everyone else, if you observe very closely, you'll note distinct qualities, none of which are racial, socioeconomic, or sexual, which disconnects them from so many other people. They do not fit neatly into any role definition, job descriptions, geographic patterns, educational levels, or financial statistics. There's a different quality about them, but the different part is not discernible by scanning the traditional external factors that typify many efforts at classifying people. They may be rich or poor, male or female, black or white, living anywhere, doing just about anything, and yet they are different in that they have no erroneous zones. How can you tell when you run into a NEZ person? Watch them. Listen to them. This is what you'll discover. First, and most obviously, you see a person who likes virtually everything about life. Yep, this is a liker. A person who is comfortable doing just about anything, and one who wastes no time in complaining or wishing that things were otherwise. They are enthusiastic about life, and they want all that they can get out of it. They like picnics, movies, books, sports, concerts, cities, farms, animals, mountains, and just about anything that you can include in your list. They just plain like. When you're around them, you'll note a startling absence of grumbling, moaning, or even passive sighing. If it rains, they like it. If it's hot, they dig it rather than croak about it. If they're in a traffic jam or at a party or all alone, they simply deal with what is there. No pretending to enjoy, but a sensible acceptance of what is, and an outlandish ability to delight in virtually everything. Ask them what they don't like, and they are hard-pressed to come up with an honest answer. They don't have sense enough to come in out of the rain. Why? Because they see rain as beautiful, thrilling, and something to experience. They like it. Slush doesn't send them into a fury. They observe it, splash around in it, and accept it as a part of what it means to be alive. Do they like cats? Yes. Bears? Yes. Worms? Yep. You'll be hard-pressed to come up with things, events, people, activities, or ideas that they dislike. They live, and while such annoyances as disease germs, droughts, mosquitoes, floods, and the like are not warmly embraced by NEZ people, they never spend any of their present moments complaining about them or wishing that they weren't so. If situations need to be eradicated, then they will very likely work as eradicators, enjoying themselves and living all of their present moments. Try as you might, you'll have a tough time coming up with something they'll dislike doing. Truly, they are likers of life, and they wallow in all of it, getting out of it all that is possible for them. A NEZ person is free from guilt and all of the attendant anxiety that goes with using up your present moments, being immobilized over past events. Certainly they can admit to making mistakes, and they can vow to avoid repeating certain behaviors that are counterproductive in any way. But they do not waste their time wishing that they hadn't done something, or being upset because they dislike something that they had done at an earlier moment in their life. Complete freedom from guilt will be the shocking behavior that you will observe in your Nez person. No lamenting the past, and no efforts to make others choose their own guilt by asking such inane questions as, "Why didn't you do it differently?" Or "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" And so on. They seem to recognize that life lived through is just that, and no amount of feeling bad will alter the past. While they practice this non-guilt on themselves without any effort, because it is natural, they are remarkably free from even helping others to choose guilt for themselves, because they see with a third internal eye that feeling bad in the present moment only reinforces a poor self-image, and that learning from the past is a far superior tact over remonstrating about the past. You'll never see them manipulating others by telling them how bad they've been, nor will you be able to manipulate them with the same tactics. They won't get angry at you. They'll simply ignore it and see you as someone who is a guilt dispenser. Rather than being upset at you, they'll go away, or they'll change the subject. Hence, you won't even recognize that the very strategy that works so beautifully on most people has failed dismally on your Nez friend. Rather than smear themselves and others with guilt, they just unceremoniously pass when it comes along. Similarly, your Nez chap will be a non-worrier. You'll soon note that circumstances that drive many people to frenzy will be mildly internalized by a Nez person. They are not planners and putters away for the future. They refuse to worry when you do, and they keep themselves unmucked up by the accompanying anxiety that goes with worry. You can't drive him or her crazy with worry. They don't know how to do it. Almost as if it is just not a part of their makeup. Not necessarily calm at all moments, but just unwilling to spend any present moments disasterizing about things in the future over which they have no control. They are very present moment oriented, and they have an internal signal that seems to remind them that all worrying must take place now in the present moment, and that it is a foolish way to go about living one's current life. With no present moments ever available for awfulizing, they just never seem to get around to the business of worry that so occupies most lives. Your Nez person is able to live now rather than in the past or the future. They are unthreatened by the unknown, and they seek out experiences that are new, untried, and unfamiliar to them. They love ambiguous things rather than being upset by them. They love the now in virtually all settings, being aware that this is all that they have. They don't plan for a future event and let long periods of inactivity elapse as they await a payoff. The moments between events are just as livable as those taken up by the events themselves, and they have that uncanny ability to get every pleasure out of their daily lives. They are not postponers saving for a rainy day, and while their culture admonishes such behavior, they are unthreatened by reproachment. They gather in their happiness now, and when a future now arrives, they gather in that one as well. Strange, but this Nez individual is always enjoying simply because they see the folly of waiting to enjoy. This is not some special credo that they've adopted. It is the natural way of living, very much like that of any child or all animals. Grabbing heavy doses of present moment fulfillment, while most normals spend their lives waiting for their payoffs and never being able to seize them. These people are strikingly independent people. They are out of the nest. And while they have a strong love and devotion for family, they see independence as far superior to dependence in all relationships.
Inspiration responds to our attentiveness in various and sometimes unexpected ways. For example, when I began writing this book, I debated between the two titles, Inspiration, Your Ultimate Destiny, or Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling. One day, while I was swimming in the ocean, I was going back and forth in my mind, trying out both titles. Still uncertain, when I'd finished my swim, I called Reed Tracy, who's the president and CEO of my publishing company at Hay House, from a payphone to get his opinion about the title. While I waited for him to answer, the word calling appeared on the miniature screen of the telephone. Nothing else, just calling.
and then the word began to flash on and off as if it were trying to get my attention. When Reed answered, I told him what had just occurred, and we both agreed on Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, for the title of this book and this program. All of this may appear to be nothing more than a silly coincidence, but I know better. I think of the word inspiration as meaning being in spirit. When we're in spirit, we're inspired. And when we're inspired, it's because we're back in spirit, fully awake to spirit within us. Being inspired is an experience of joy. We feel completely connected to our source and totally on purpose. Our creative juices flow, and we bring exceptionally high energy to our daily life. We're not judging others or ourselves. We're uncritical and unbothered by behaviors or attitudes that, in uninspired moments, are frustrating. Our heart sings in appreciation for every breath, and we're tolerant, joyful, and loving. Being in spirit isn't necessarily restricted to the work we do or the activities of our daily life. We can be inspired and at the same time be unsure of what vocation to pursue or what activities we want to schedule. Inspiration is a simple recognition of spirit within ourselves. It's a return to that invisible, formless field from which all things emanate, a field of energy that I call intention in my previous book, The Power of Intention. My experience with being in spirit. When I'm in spirit, I have a feeling of contentment. But more than this, I experience joy. I'm able to receive the vibrational energies of my source, call them voices or messages or silent reminders, even invisible suggestions or what have you, but they're vibrations of energy that I'm able to align with as I get myself out of the way. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, one of the world's great geniuses, once remarked, quote, "When I am, as it were, completely myself, entirely alone and of good cheer, say, traveling in a carriage or walking after a good meal or during the night when I cannot sleep, it is on such occasions that my ideas flow best and most abundantly. Whence and how they come, I know not, nor can I foresee them." End of quote. We don't have to be a genius to know what Mozart speaks of. The same force in a different way is flowing through you and me right now. I've learned to remove resistance to the free flow of this spiritual energy by reminding myself to align with it, or to be in spirit in my thoughts and my expectations. When I sit down to write, my desire is to invite spirit to express through me, and I encourage ideas to flow freely. Like Mozart, I'm connected as if it were to my source in spirit, thinking and expecting to be the instrument of my spiritual source. Ideas flow, and whatever assistance I need just shows up. And, like Mozart, I can't describe how the ideas come, and I can't force them. Staying in spirit seems to be the secret to this feeling of being inspired. I also find that inspiration flows in other areas of my life when my primary mission is like what Michael Berg so beautifully describes in Becoming Like God, Kabbalah, and Our Ultimate Destiny. Quote, "Just as every being is God's business, every being becomes our business as well." Unquote. That is, being inspired necessitates the willingness to suspend ego and enter a space where I want to share who I am and what I have in a completely unlimited fashion.
When you feel inspired, everything works. The reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired. And Patanjali said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction. And you find yourself in a new and great and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. There's some very important wisdom in that. This idea of finding yourself inspired means that you allow these dormant forces, these things that are in every single one of us, to come alive. Consciousness begins to expand. Things begin to show up in your life. You begin to manage the coincidences of your life.
natural extension of being grateful is the development of a generous heart. Perfect generosity is a willingness to give of yourself and all that you have manifested without any expectation of a return. Manifesting is about connecting to the universal spirit, which is infinite and abundant in supply. Manifesting is not about seeing neediness in yourself, but is rather about feeling complete with that radiant abundance. It is concerned with unconditional love and attracting that abundant love to your individual life. When you feel the presence of that abundance, your feeling of gratitude will push you in the direction of generosity. It is in the expression of your generosity that you will feel most connected to the unconditional love of the universal spirit. The more you feel a desire to share what you receive unconditionally, the more you will experience it flowing into your life. Generosity and self-liberation go together. Generosity is helpful for your own liberation in that it teaches you about the inner quality of letting go. Letting go and releasing your attachments are the most freeing things you can do to liberate yourself from the ego. A need to hang on to things and money you receive arises out of an inner sense of incompleteness. Practicing generosity aligns you with your sense of completeness and love. Generosity extends to more than simply sharing your material possessions. Generosity includes offering kindness, care, love, and nurturing. Furthermore, the spirit of generosity can and does ultimately relate to how we treat ourselves. If you have a generous heart that has no qualms about giving, you will treat yourself lovingly and will nurture yourself without feeling any sense of guilt. Thus, giving and receiving are really the way the universe works. Every single time that you take in a breath and then exhale, you are engaged in a process of giving and receiving that is vital to the material and spiritual world. With each inhalation, you take in the oxygen and nitrogen you must have to exist. And with each exhalation, you send back the carbon dioxide that supplies the entire plant world. The cycle of generous giving and receiving is exactly the same as the very act of breathing. Look around you and notice how everything in our universe is a result of giving and receiving. The entire food chain represents a giving of life and a taking of life, and then a giving back in an endless cycle of material manifestation. The process works in the same way on the spiritual level. You put out loving energy to connect to that which you desire, and it returns to you. It is a giving and receiving action. So therefore, it's really important to cultivate an attitude of generosity. Put generosity into your manifestation practice to keep the natural flow of giving and receiving moving in your life. Recognize that this is a way of being that can be developed. You may have convinced yourself that giving is impossible because you have too little for yourself. If you're not generous when it's difficult, you will not be generous when it is easy. Generosity is a function of the heart, not the wallet. A generous heart is one that places no limitations on its ability to be generous with others and does not do it for reward or recognition. Think of the myriad of things that you do each day for others, including animals and the environment, as ways of practicing generosity. Talking to a lonely neighbor, feeding a stray cat, opening a door, anonymously paying the toll for the car behind you, vacuuming the carpet, or whatever may occur in the thousands of actions you undertake each day. Most important, remember that to give without expectation of an acknowledgement is truly the work of your higher self. Keep your generosity practices private. Then become aware of the internal resistances that arise within you when you have an impulse to give. Your fear of not having enough for yourself and your family, your doubts about whether others are truly needy, the fact that others won't appreciate it anyway, are impulses that you need to honor as valid. All of these inner doubts and fears should be examined without judgment. And then give yourself designated times and periods of time to practice being generous, particularly in offering service or in giving of your time. Sometimes I notice my young son out playing soccer by himself, wishing in his heart he had someone to play with. I remind myself to forget about the zillion things I have to do, my state of fatigue or whatever, and I designate the next several hours to simply sharing my time with him, something we both love. Practice being able to receive. Accept help when others offer it. Allow others to do for you without feeling embarrassed or without feeling that your independence is threatened. If you turn off the receiving side, you cut the natural flow of energy, just as if you turned off the giving side. Receiving is very much a component of the spiritual practice of manifestation, and you can work at allowing this into your life with gratitude and love. Furthermore, practice giving just a bit more than you think you can, and a bit more than your own comfort level allows. Whatever you have convinced yourself is the limit of your generosity, try going beyond it. You also can practice a little bit more generosity with your own self than you are normally accustomed to. Order the item on the menu that costs more, or give yourself a few extra days on your vacation trip, or allow yourself the luxury of a body massage or a facial. Extend your generosity into service as a way of life. Our encounters and relationships are a central influence on ourselves and each other. Service is a word that is not commonly thought of as part of our ordinary relationships, yet service simply cannot be separated from relationships. When you cultivate an attitude of gratitude and generosity, you will find yourself wanting to be in the service of others. You will find it natural to extend that which you receive into the service of others as well. If you receive a great teaching, you will want to teach it to others. If you receive love, you will wish to extend that love unconditionally outward. Your relationships will automatically be felt as gifts for the service of others. When you contemplate the purpose of your life in the material plane, you will discover that the only thing you can do with your life is to give it away. You cannot lay claim to anything. It is all transitory. You will find your purpose and your strength when you see that you are in a relationship with all other living things, and that you are purposeful and peaceful when you serve in some capacity. It is out of this state of recognizing our fundamental interconnectedness that we realize we are all in a constant state of service to each other. It is this awareness that you want to keep uppermost in your mind as you generate this principle of spiritual manifesting. Service, at its very basic core, is an inner choice to offer a helpful and healing attitude to others as well as to ourselves. A natural outgrowth of feeling grateful for our daily life manifestations is experiencing the inclination to be generous. Martin Luther King Jr. once had remarked that the only way to convert an enemy to a friend is through love, not hatred or fighting. We don't conquer anything, and there's nothing to fight. Consider the results we've achieved when we tried to fight something in order to conquer it. For example, ever since war was declared on poverty, there's more of it in the world than ever. Our wars on drugs have only served to triple our prison populations and bring illegal substances to more people at younger ages. As early as junior high school, there's hardly a child who doesn't know how to acquire all manner of drugs. Our wars on crime have resulted in more criminals, more fear, more surveillance, more distrust, and more abuse by law enforcement personnel. Our war on terror has turned us into people who behave toward those we label terrorists in ways that emulate the terrorism we're supposedly desirous of eliminating. And our wars on cancer, obesity, and hunger have not eliminated those conditions either. Here's the reasoning behind what I've just elaborated. The truth of this universe is that we live in an energy system that operates on the law of attraction. That is, we become what we think about all day long. If we think about what we hate, this is an energy that we're offering to our desires. In this system, then, we'll attract more of what we think about. Consequently, more of what we hate is what we will attract. We act on our thoughts. Our thoughts of hate, violence, fighting, and war generate actions of hate, violence, fighting, and war. And lo and behold, we see the fruits of this thinking showing up even if our intentions are positively aligned with good energy or God energy. We get what we think about, whether we want it or not. Thoughts that translate into fighting and war almost always guarantee that the response is a counterforce. That is, others will respond in kind to our desire to fight and conquer. This kind of counterforce can continue for centuries, with unborn generations programmed to carry on the fight. This same understanding of how fighting weakens us and generates more imbalance in our lives is applicable to our experience with addictions. We can become addiction-free relatively quickly if we make a decision to eliminate fighting and conquering from our efforts. The thoughts and energy that replace fighting need to be in the form of non-warlike thoughts. As Emerson said so succinctly, the remedy of all blunders, the cure of blindness, the cure of crime, is love. And addictions constitute one huge blunder. I can assure you, having spent a great deal of my life immersed in such folly myself. Overcoming blunder-filled thinking. For those of you who may not be familiar with my friend Ram Dass, in the late 1960s, he helped shape the awakening consciousness of an entire generation with his bestseller, Be Here Now. One of my favorite Ram Dass stories is the one he tells about an early encounter with Neem Karoli Baba, his guru in India. Ram Dass brought some capsules with him to India that were designed to dramatically alter one's state of consciousness. Neem Karoli Baba confronted Ram Dass about these pills and asked him to give all of them to him. Ram Dass thought that he'd brought a long-term supply of this very powerful psychedelic substance, yet he watched in horror and amazement as this enlightened being swallowed all of them right before his eyes with no visible reaction. His guru then asked him if he had any more, since these obviously weren't working. After telling this story, Ram Dass concluded with one of his most sagacious observations. If you're already in Detroit, he said, then you don't have to take a bus to get there. Addictions of every description are vehicles that people board in order to get someplace higher, more pleasurable, more peaceful, more tuned in and turned on, and so on. But if you're already aligned with this energy, then it's obviously unnecessary to climb aboard any vehicle headed to a place where you currently reside. I've played with addictions and addictive behaviors for a large part of my life. In fact, I'd say that these various addictions have been among my greatest teachers, allowing me to see that there's a higher level of consciousness and blissful awareness available to us all. But I'm also aware that using substances of non-well-being in order to experience this separate reality is assuredly a counterfeit means of doing so. I'm essentially addiction-free, and I want you to know that I didn't get to this place by fighting my addictive nature. In fact, the more I tried to conquer addictions at various stages of my life to things such as sugar, soda pop, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, and certain drugs, the more they'd gain a foothold on me. Force, counterforce. I'd apply my weapons, and they'd bring out their artillery, with my body as the battleground where the war was being waged. I was blundering my way into deeper addiction. Earlier, I quoted Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "The remedy for all blunders is love."
I did an interview yesterday on this Cablevision channel, and this young man, he said to me, he's a young kid right out of school, he said to me, "I'm going to ask you some really tough questions. I'm going to make you sweat." So I was just sitting there. He said, he started asking me things like, "Why should I buy your book?" You know, and I said, "I don't really care if you do. I just wrote it, and if it's out there, and if you want to get it, fine, and if you don't, that's fine with me too." And he said, "Well, how is your book different from anybody else's book, and what makes it better? And what do you say to all of the people out there who say that you're just peddling, positiveness and trying to make other people feel good and you're making money off of that?" I said, "They may be right." I said, he said, "That's what you tell them?" I said, "Yeah." And then when we were off camera and we were walking out, he was a very nice young man. He said, "Boy," he said, "you just skirted right away from all of those tough questions." And I said, "No, there's no such thing as a tough question when you are what Maslow called independent of the good opinion of other people. When you are beyond the need to be approved of, when you are beyond the need to have somebody else think that you're terrific, when you have slain your ego just a little bit." And believe me, I work on this hard, all right? And I'm just scratching the surface on it, all right? But as I get better and better at it, I find, in the Course in Miracle it says, if you knew, and underline knew as know, all right? If you knew who walks beside you at all times, you would never experience fear again. If you really knew that all the things that Deepak and I had talked about this afternoon, that this universal intelligence is there, that the universe will handle the details, that it's all perfect, that it's in order, if you really knew that, and weren't consumed with anything else related to your ego, you would be so free. It's like somebody would come up to you and call you a jerk, and you'd say, you got a good point there. And someone else would think that they didn't like the way you said that. You say, that's fine. And you're looking at two people, and many of your questions ask that. You're looking at two people who get a lot of criticism from our professional organizations, from people out there, from colleagues, from people who are disaffected with that, from fundamentalists, from it's all over the place. And it's like when you talked about those three things about purpose. When you know you're on purpose, it's like that old Chinese proverb, that the taller the tree, the harder the wind blows. The more you get up, the more wind you're going to see coming your way, and you just sort of let it go. It gets very peaceful.
There are certain features that distinguish these people that I'd like to define for our audience.
Sure, do it.
The first one is that their internal reference point is not their ego, it's not their image, but it's their immortal spirit, which is without beginning and without end. The second is their internal dialogue is not, as Wayne was saying, what's in it for me? Their internal dialogue is, how can I help? The third is,
that's a great mantra, by the way. How may I serve? How may I serve?
How can I help? Because if that's dharma, if I can help, then everything that I do out there, give out there, it comes to me, back to me.
Yeah.
The third characteristic is that there is wisdom and security in insecurity. That one should factor in that life is, by definition, uncertain. And it's a miracle that sometimes in that field of uncertainty we introduce an intention and magically appears. But if we relinquish our attachment to all the time want things to be in a certain way instead of how they actually are, then that's struggle. There's an expression I heard a long time ago, I don't even remember who said it. The person said,
Probably me.
yeah, probably.
One of mine.
Maybe it is. When things don't seem to go my way, I let go of my idea of how they should be, trusting that I do not know the picture, the total picture. Because if I knew it, I'd know it's okay. So that is the wisdom of insecurity, the wisdom of uncertainty. And then, of course, the behavior of people who experience timelessness, it's spontaneous, never in anticipation of a response, never for approval, never the need to control. External goals go away, internal goals become much more important. Material goals are important, but they should not dominate our internal goals, which are the need to love, the need to be loved, the need to acquire wisdom, the need to discover our spiritual identity. And then finally, as I said, it is that there is loss of fear of change. Because all fear that exists is the fear of mortality in disguise. It's the fear of change. Get in touch with that part of yourself which is beyond change, and then there is no fear.
It seems to me that fear would disappear in our lives completely if we knew that that divine omnipotence that flows through everything flows through us. If we really knew that and had that awareness and lived with it, that then there's always, of course, the issue of do you just walk through life and not worry about anything, not be consumed with anything, because everything's just all handled for you and just taken care of, or do you, as Jung put it, he said that's an enormous paradox that they talk about in the Gita, that's cleaving the opposites. He put it this way, he said, all of you, at the same moment that you are protagonists in your own life, making choices, at the same instant, you are also spear carriers, or the extras, in a much larger drama. In fact, he said, and he studied this for a lifetime, he said, you are doomed to make choices. So you've got to live with both of those opposites, and when you sort of cleave that opposite, you get very peaceful and you get purposeful, and it doesn't mean that you're resigned and say, oh, there's starvation in the world, so I won't be concerned about it. What you do is you don't get attached to it, and you don't tell yourself that it shouldn't be happening, and you say, yes, indeed, it must be a part of the divine plan, but so at the same instant is my desire to end it. So both of those are existing. So that's what you go with, your desire to end it. And you don't become one more part of the problem where you're just judging it.
Fourth verse of the Tao Te Ching. Quote, "The Tao is empty but inexhaustible, bottomless, the ancestor of it all. Within it, the sharp edges become smooth, the twisted knots loosen, the sun is softened by a cloud, the dust settles into place. It is hidden, but always present. I do not know who gave birth to it. It seems to be the common ancestor of all, the father of things." End quote. Living infinitely. The Tao is the source of all life, yet it is empty and limitless and cannot be constrained, quantified, or measured. This life-giving energy of creation provides a profound source of joy that's accessible at all times. If you live from an infinite perspective, you'll relinquish the idea that your own identity is the physical body in which you progress from birth to death. In your totality, you're an infinite being disguised as a person existing in the world of sharp edges and twisted knots, as this verse refers to. Coalescing within and around you at all times is the invisible, life-giving force of the Tao. It is inexhaustible, it is bottomless, it cannot be depleted. This fourth verse of the Tao invites you to consider rearranging your thoughts about who you are. It seems to be saying that cultivating an awareness of the infinite aspect of yourself is the way to tap into the limitless source of creative energy that flows through you. For example, you may want to help some less fortunate people improve their day-to-day existence, but you don't believe that you have the time or the energy to do so because of who you are and what you're presently doing. As you relax your hold on the idea of yourself as the job you do or the life you're living, and seek to acquaint yourself with the limitless creative energy that's a part of you, the time and energy you require will appear. Imagine yourself helping others, guided by the infinite aspect of yourself, will generate behavior and actions that complement your vision through the common ancestor of the Tao. Ultimately, you'll cultivate an absolute knowing that whatever assistance you need is right here and right now, in front of, in back of, above, and below you. It is empty, yet very much present. It is, as Lao Tzu reminds you, inexhaustible, bottomless, the ancestor of it all. Awareness of the omnipresence of the Tao means that thoughts of shortages or lacks aren't prevalent. Beliefs such as, there's no way this will happen, it's not my destiny, or with my luck things could never work out, cease to be entertained. Instead, you begin to expect that what you imagine for yourself is not only on its way, it's already here. This new self-portrait based on the cooperative presence of the invisible Tao elevates you to living an inspired life, that is, one of being in spirit, or in unending touch with the Tao. When you live infinitely, the rewards are a sense of peaceful joy, because you know that all is in order. This is what I imagine Lao Tzu's ancient words mean in our modern era. First, consider all things that seem to be a problem from the perspective of the eternal Tao. Believing that there's a shortage of prosperity is a signal to think in terms of the inexhaustible source, the Tao. Just like everything else on our planet, money is available in limitless quantities. Know this and connect to the bottomless supply. Do it first in your thoughts by affirming, everything I need now is here. Prosperity thoughts are energetic instructions to access your infinite self, so actions will follow them. Take this same approach, staying in harmony with the Tao, to all of your problems, for there's an all-encompassing supply of well-being to partner with. So rather than giving energy to illness and perceived misfortunes, stay with the Tao. Stay with what can never be used up. Stay with that which is the Father of all things, the creative source of it all. It will work with and for you, as you have it in your thoughts, then in your feelings, and finally, in your actions. And secondly, be an infinite observer. When acknowledged as a sign of change, worry is transitory. It's simply part of the world of the changing. If you view your life from the vantage point of an infinite observer, concerns, anxieties, and struggles blend into the eternal mix. From this ageless perspective, picture how important the things you feel depressed about now will be in 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, or an uncountable number of years. Remember that you, like the infinite Tao from which you originated, are part of an eternal reality. Rearrange your thoughts to practice thinking in alignment with the Tao. With the assistance of the eternal Tao, all of the sharp edges of life smooth out, the knots loosen, and the dust settles. Try it. Do the Tao now. Pick a situation today. Any situation will work, and instead of verbally responding, be silent and listen to your thoughts. For example, in a social gathering or business meeting, choose to seek the emptiness found in silence in order to be aware of your infinite self. Invite it to let you know when or whether to respond. If you find your worldly ego interpreting or judging, then just observe that without criticizing or changing it, you'll begin to find more and more situations where it feels peaceful and joyful to be without response, just to be in the infinity that's hidden but always present. You might want to duplicate this advice of my teacher, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and post it conspicuously so that you can read it daily, as I do. Quote, "Wisdom is knowing I am nothing, love is knowing I am everything, and in between the two, my life moves." Unquote. And while you're living, stay as close to love as you can.
Yes, ma'am. What is your first name? It's Dana.
One of the challenges that I have in my own personal development is that I love what you say. I want it. When I get challenged, I find it difficult for my heart. How do you get your heart and your brain to be congruent?
Thanks. That's a great question. You get your heart and your brain to be congruent the same way you learn to hit a backhand in tennis. The same way you learn how to play a game of chess. The same way you learn how to set your VCR.
the same way you learn how to meditate. You do it not just with practice, but you do it with a commitment to it. And when you have a commitment to it, you are raising your energy level. And I'll speak a lot here in this program about energy and energy levels. And very often the reason our heart is not congruent with our thoughts is because we allow ourselves to become immersed in lowered energy fields. And we allow, people say to me so often, what you say sounds great, but you don't know what it's like to be in my family. You don't know what it's like to be around my children. You don't know what it's like where I work. I'm in a world which is, noisy, which is rude, which is filled with hatred, and so on. What do I do about that? And I always say, who were the most influential people that ever walked on this planet? And what did they have to teach us? That's what you want to go to. What did Jesus say to us? What did Moses say to us? What did Buddha say? What did Muhammad? These weren't just great teachers. These were people who lived at a higher energy field, who sent love in response to hate, who sent joy in response to sadness, who had forgiveness in their hearts as the only thing that they had to give away. You practice that. You practice it, and you stop yourself when you find yourself moving. It's like with the backhand. When you go to hit your backhand and all of a sudden you hit one and it goes over the fence, you don't keep doing that. You don't just keep saying, well, I just can't help it. It just keeps going over the... You stop and you make the correction instantaneously, at the moment. And if you start to practice it before long, it doesn't take very long. It's like I told you about the woman who was the prostitute up in Seattle. I mean, she made a decision that she was no longer going to be a victim in her life, and she was no longer going to be, and she was addicted to one of the strongest substances and she changed overnight, and she's never gone back. She made a heart connection. And I always say, I repeat the prayer of St. Francis every day, 2 or 3 times a day. And when I repeat that prayer, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Those are 7 chapters in Spiritual Solution to Every Problem. And he said, O Lord, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console. To be loved as to love. To be understood as to understand. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying to self that we are born to eternal life. I just repeat that, and there's such energy in that. Eknath Eswaran taught me about the energy in that prayer. He said, carry it around with you. Carry that around with you. Just keep it in your pocket. It's right here in my pocket. I always have it with me. And the energy is always there. And it's just a very subtle kind of reminder. And the other thing I would say about keeping congruence is to turn it over to something that you're connected to, but that is higher than the energy of your thoughts. Turn it over to God, in other words. Just turn it over and watch and see what happens. So I was finishing up the collection run, and I saw a couple that I recognized over the years, and there was a woman, and she was having difficulty with her luggage. And I just said to her, oh, here, let me help you with that. And she gave me a real harsh look and said, no, I don't want any help. And I said, are you sure? I said, because one of her suitcases, she had 2 suitcases, and one was going one direction and the other. I said, here, let me help you with that. I don't want any help from you, especially from you. And it gave me that real harsh.
Wow.
Okay. So this happened an hour ago. And so it's like, and I have no idea what prompted. This is just someone I've just seen around the place where I live once in a while. It's a building where a lot of people live. And so the reason I bring it up is because at the moment that something like this occurs, when you encounter someone who's hostile towards you, or who's sending you an ugly message, or there's any number of endless reasons about why that might be taking place. It might have to do with something that I did or said or whatever that I'm not even aware of. It might have something to do with something that's going on in this person's life at this particular time. It could be her husband was walking with her, and he said, don't take that personally. And I was thinking about the Four Agreements. Have you ever read the Four Agreements?
Sure, Don Miguel.
Yeah, do you remember
It's a
which
classic.
one I'm speaking about? Which one of those agreements? He said,
I don't know.
I don't want to give you a test here on the air. But one of the agreements was, don't take anything personally, And I was just thinking about what Don Miguel had said in that book about not taking things personally, because so often when we encounter someone who's what we might consider rude or unpleasant or unhappy or whatever it is, the first thing that we want to do is just take it personally, say, she has no right to talk to me like that, and how dare you, and I'm going to find out what's going on, and or whatever it might, or just go around in a morose kind of way. And it's what I'm talking about, even when I'm talking about watching that movie and being a different person watching that movie, or reading the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East 25 years after I purchased it, and having it have something totally new for me. And my reaction to this woman talking in this fashion to me just an hour ago or so was very different than it was even for me even a decade or so, or maybe even a few months ago, before I immersed myself in preparation for this seminar that I'm going to be doing on the 24th and 25th of this month, called I Am Light. That I reminded myself that I am light, and that when you have a choice to be right or to be kind, that it's really important to be able to choose kind. And so rather than being right and saying, well, how dare anybody talk to me like that? And I have, I didn't do anything to her, and she's just, instead my immediate reaction was to push that kind of, subconscious mind training that I've had, over the years, to react with hostility or hurt or pain or frustration or whatever whenever you encounter what you might consider to be unpleasant or rude behavior in something, is to come from a place of kindness. And I was just thinking to myself how happy I was in the last hour that I didn't walk around wondering and being hurt by and being upset, but instead was just thinking about this woman and just trying to send her as much love as I possibly can, and hope that whatever it is that would motivate her to react in that way to an attempted act of kindness, that it gets soothed and it gets happy, that she becomes happy. And I think if I send energy to her, that would be it just represents a kind of growth thing for me as a person. And if we can, as I speak to all of you out there all over the world, when you encounter any kind of behavior that don't be one of those kind of people who's looking for an occasion to be offended, and consequently then be emotionally upset, and then consequently attract more of what you don't want in your life. And I think that's the essence of what Abraham was speaking to me about in this new product that we have, this book and DVD and CD called Co-Creating at its Best, that you want the law of attraction is always working. And if you put your thoughts on what you don't like or what you're unhappy about or what makes you angry, then you're going to align with an energy that is going to offer you experiences that match up to exactly what it is that you're thinking, so that every moment of your life, regardless of what it is that's coming at you, you have a choice. And this woman, for me, was a great reminder that I'm growing, and that I can be applying this not just in this kind of an event, but I can be applying it in all kinds of places all over my world, including all of the negativity and things that are taking place. For example, what is taking place in Paris over the weekend at the satirical, at Charlie Hebdo, is that how you say it?
Hebdo.
And what was going on, and to not fill my heart and my head with all kinds of antipathy and vituperative thoughts about all the Muslims in the world and being angry at them, as I'm hearing so many people, and instead just working at, we're never going to solve these problems of anger and hostility, which in a personal way show up in the event that I had when trying to help a woman with her luggage, but when they're extended into a larger and larger perspective, and the solution is going to be in finding a place where all of us can send love, where our hearts are so filled with rage and hate toward so many people.
You can attract to yourself what you desire. The central notion of manifesting is the understanding that you have within yourself the ability to attract the objects of your desire. Being able to attract your desires may seem more likely when you consider how things move from the world of the formless into the world of the form. In one of the most intriguing sentences in the New Testament, St. Paul addresses this process of creation. He says it this way: "Things which are seen are not made of things which do appear." St. Paul is telling us that the creative energy is neither solid nor restricted. The physical world of form originates in something other than the form itself. St. Paul's words form the basis for my writing about this principle and for several of those to come in this tape. I believe they suggest how energy informs our ability to attract what we desire. St. Paul is giving us a clue about bringing our desires into the world of matter. Energy then becomes a force that we can tap into. In a film about his boyhood, Albert Einstein describes picking up a compass and watching it in fascination as the needle moved when he changed direction. He said that he became obsessed with understanding the invisible force that moved the compass needle. Where was the force located? Who controlled it? Why did it always work? Like magnetism, there is a force that has many characteristics that are quite impossible to detect with our physical senses. We call this force energy. Energy is in all things in our universe and has an impact upon objects around it with something that we describe as the power of attraction. In magnetic fields, we can easily see it at work, yet we're unable to detect the formless energy with our sensory apparatus. The force is there, attracting and repelling, and it is everywhere on our planet. If it is everywhere, then it is also within us. It seems unlikely that our senses will inform us any better than they help us comprehend how a magnetic pole works. We can see the results, but the force itself is always elusive and in motion. The essence of this fourth principle of manifesting is that we can utilize this energy because we are this energy. We can use this universal energy to bring to us objects of our desire because the same energy that is in what we desire is also in us, and vice versa. It is simply a matter of alignment and will that allows us to tap into this force. Bringing things into the physical world is a process that we call creation. What we create involves the use of the same power that is in all that is created. It is only a matter of degree. There's absolutely no difference in the power that brings something from the world of waves into the world of particles and the power that brings your thoughts or mental pictures into form. I encourage you to listen to this again and again and commit it to memory. The world of spirit from which all matter derives and the world of matter comprise one harmonious whole. They are separate but always together, just like the peak of the wave and its base, separate but forming an inseparable whole. Think of manifesting as nothing more than transforming waves of possibility into particles of reality. The transforming process requires energy. This energy is invisible but is always in everything, including us. Your mental pictures are related to this power of attraction. There is a power within you that allows you to form a thought or a picture. This mental picturing power is the energy of attraction that is in all creative processes. It is different in degree, but nevertheless identical with the power of attraction. This power is the very substance of life. You can't see, touch, or hear this power, but it is within you. In using this power, you are not in any way attempting to change or interfere with the laws of nature. You are fulfilling the laws. This undifferentiated power is the basis for the mysterious attraction that draws your desires to you. Think of yourself as a way that God has of particularizing. Then see your ability to formulate mental pictures
as the divine creative power energizing through you. Can you see that the same creative energy that particularizes as yourself is what you use to manifest your desires? This power thrives on happiness, love, joy, contentment, and peace. The more blissful and loving you are, the more the divine spirit particularizes within you and the more godlike you become. It is through your thoughts, or how you use your power to create a thought, that all creative energy is attracted to you. If your mental pictures are of being surrounded by things and conditions that you desire, and they are rooted in joy and faith, your creative thoughts will attract these surroundings and conditions into your life. The power to even have a thought is a divine power. With this recognition of its sacredness, you form a vision or a mental picture. Finally, you hold it lovingly in place with the inner knowledge that the God force that brought everything in the universe into existence also created you. The form that this energy will take will be controlled and directed by your will or your mental picturing. It is waiting to take any direction you decide. You impress upon the universal mind the object of your desire, and you calmly and knowingly proceed to act upon that picture, allowing the greater intelligence and your own, which is a part of that greater intelligence, to work through you to produce the results. You abandon all fear and return to the affairs of your life, assured that the necessary conditions will soon come into view or are already there. The key is to repeat the mental pictures until the truth of what you are affirming resonates within you without an ounce of doubt. And there will be times when it appears that it isn't working. If your picture doesn't manifest in the time span that you've designated, relax and retreat to your knowing that it is already in place in the spiritual realm. Time is simply not a recognizing feature of the all-creating wisdom.
These kinds of events of people walking by and saying, "Is this your strawberry ice cream?" and you say, "Wow, I was just thinking about that. Ooh, what's going on? How did that happen? Where did that come from?" Or you're thinking about your sister and you're just having a conversation with her. You haven't seen her in 5 years and you go to the phone and she's calling, or, endless numbers of these kinds of synchronistic events that almost like you have a collaboration with fate they become more frequent, they become more noticeable, they aren't something that you say, "Oh, how could this happen? Isn't that interesting?" or "It's just chaos," because there's no such thing as chaos,
no,
is there?
It's
chaos.
only the appearance of chaos. There is nothing in chaos. It's like when you go to, let's say you go to New York City, and the best example I can use of chaos is Grand Central Station. Okay,
yeah.
So everybody is going hither and thither every which way and what, and you think it's chaotic. But each person is going to a specific destination. And not only that, if you were to announce a track change from track 11 to track 10, you'd see a further intensification of the chaos. But in fact, it is an elaboration of the underlying order. So in all this seeming chaos, there's an underlying order. And it's not only that you should go and get flowers wherever you go. The Vedic expression is, when you're in that state, then wherever you go, flowers will bloom.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for them. You choose where you want to go, and the flowers will bloom on your path.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I know that. I do. And I've seen it happen, and I believe you can take this kind of consciousness and make it work not only for you but for those around you or for the world. That the thoughts, the images, the vision, the ability to manifest, to create what you want for yourself. You see, if enough of us in the world believe, for example, in a nuclear holocaust, just taking it to something that affects all of us and certainly all of our children who are going to inherit this place from it. If enough of us believe that exists, doesn't it? I mean, that's a consciousness. And if enough of us believe it, we will collectively begin to act upon that consciousness, that fear, if you will. Because fear is really, to me, there's like fear and love in there. I mean, hate isn't the opposite of love. Fear is the opposite of love. When you
eradicate the fear. Like if I'm afraid of something happening, an opinion that somebody might have of me, somebody doing something to me that might not, somebody taking my money away from me, somebody, an IRS audit, whatever it may be that is fearful, I'm creating those pheromones that you were talking about, those fearful pheromones. I like that. That could be a rock group. The fearful pheromones. Watch, they'll be on TV tomorrow. You create that. When I have that fearful thought, I find myself, I use a technique that I'm writing about in Real Magic where I just say, I use the word next. Just like, okay, here's that thought, and I say to myself, next. Like that thought, I don't need that fearful thought, or that fearful thought is going to create the very thing that it is that I'm anticipating. So I just remind myself of next, and the stress inside, the anxiety, whatever, seems to dissipate, and I substitute fear with love, with harmony, with bliss, with ease, with whatever you want to call that. And the minute that I do that, the minute that I just shift that thought, my physiology changes. I am creating molecules with my mind that create love and harmony instead of fear, and the problem is gone.
Unconditional love is really nothing more than the absence of fear. The ego is where fears originate, with constant messages that you are incomplete and need more, that you need to win to be better in comparison to others. With its unceasing pressure, the ego keeps you in a constant state of turmoil and anxiety. Here is where all fears are birthed and nurtured within you. To accept unconditional love as your premise for living, you will have to tell the ego that there is no need to prove anything, and that all you want or hope for is already here. With this kind of declaration, fear is removed from your life and is replaced with love. Remember the biblical quote, "Perfect love casteth out all fear." The world you live in is an intelligent system in which every moving part is coordinated by every other moving part. There's a universal life force that supports and orchestrates everything. It all works together in perfect harmony. You are one of those moving parts. You showed up here in this body that you inhabit, precisely on time. Your body will leave here with the same precision. You're an essential piece of this complex system. Here you are in this intelligent system that has no beginnings and no ends, in which all of the galaxies move in harmony with each other. You must have shown up here for a reason. Khalil Gibran said, "When you are born, your work is placed in your heart." Take a moment right now and point to yourself. Your finger is very likely pointing right at your heart, not at your brain, but at your heart. This is who you are. The constant beating of your heart in and out and in, is a symbol of your infinite connection to the always present heartbeat of God, or the universal intelligence. Your left brain calculates, figures things out, analyzes, and comes up with the most logical choices for you. It thinks. Your right brain represents your intuitive side. This is the part of you that goes beyond reason and analysis. It's the part of you that feels things, that's sensitive to love, that's emotional about what's important to you. Your right brain allows you to tear up as you hold your babies or bask in the beauty of a glorious day. Your left brain can analyze it, while your right brain lets you feel it. Pick a situation and ask yourself if what you know or what you feel is most important to you. Generally, what you'll take care of first depends on the situation and circumstances you're in. Your intellect can be figuring out exactly how you're supposed to act in a relationship when things are collapsing or when they're rapturous. And then there are times when what you feel will supersede what you know. If you are feeling fearful, scared, lonely, or on the other hand thrilled, loving, and ecstatic, these will be the dominant forces you'll act upon. These are the times when your right brain is right. Your right brain will always lead you passionately to your purpose. Listening to your right brain. There's an intuitive, invisible presence that's always with you. I picture this presence as a nagging little creature who sits on your right shoulder and reminds you when you've lost your sense of purpose. Listen to your invisible companion. Express the music that you hear and ignore what everyone else around you thinks you should be doing. As Thoreau put it, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music he hears, however measured or far away. Be willing to accept that others may even see you as having betrayed them, but you haven't betrayed your music, your purpose. Listen to your music, and do what you know you have to do to feel whole, to feel complete. and to feel as if you're fulfilling your destiny. You'll never be at peace if you don't get that music out and let it play. Let the world know why you're here, and do it with passion. Being passionate means taking risks. You may indeed find yourself living a comfortable life when you don't follow your instincts. You're aware of that nagging companion saying to you, "This may look right, but does it feel right? Are you doing what you came here to do?" For many people, the answer is, "How do I know what my heroic mission is?" You'll find your passion in what inspires you the most. And what does the word inspire mean? It derives from the words in spirit. When you're inspired, you never have to ask about your purpose. You're living it. For one of my children, it's about riding horses and being at the stables. She's in heaven when on horseback, or even cleaning out a stall filled with horse manure. Another daughter is only inspired when she's singing, writing music, or performing. She's felt that way since she was 2. For another, it's her artwork and design that makes her feel purposeful. For yet another, it's designing websites and creating computer programs for others. For me, it's writing and speaking and creating products to help people become self-reliant. This has always been my passion, even as a young boy. When I go before an audience and I sit down to meditate, I repeat the mantra, "How may I serve? How may I serve? How may I serve?" How can I get my ego out of this presentation, out of this program, out of what it is that I am doing, and my needs to have rewards and to have applause and to have people tell me how wonderful I am? How can I get all of that out? If you're a dentist, you can give a flower to every patient. You can call them in the evening and ask how they're doing, as my dentist always does. You can make your waiting room a place where people look forward to coming by putting in programs like this for people to listen to while they're being drilled on. It doesn't make any difference. If you're a cab driver, you can make your cab a place of service. You can do a little bit extra. And the irony is, when you turn your life over to being a statesman and ultimately to being a spiritual being, this attitude allows this free-flowing, unconditional, loving energy that is the divine universe, that is God, to enter into your life. And it just keeps going. You're just keeping the channels open, folks. That's all you're doing. You're just keeping it open. And you're aware of every little cue that comes along that blocks that channel. The minute that it's there, it's an angry thought, it's a judgmental thought, it's a stressful thought. The minute that it shows up, you replace it with an attitude of service, gratitude, generosity, and it leaves. The part of you that knows, the part of you that is infinite, as the poet suggests, the part of you that is every place, is also in all that you would like to see show up in your life. And if you keep a generous, grateful, serving attitude, you'll never block it. Thank you.
In the Tao, it says that a victory in war is to be celebrated by mourning, because it still gives evidence that we have not found our divine nature. If you love those who love you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak love those who love them. And if you're good to those who are good to you, what virtue lies in that? Even the morally weak do that. Love your enemies. Be good to them. Share with them without expecting anything in return. Then your reward will be rich, and you will be sons of the Most High. He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be compassionate like your Father. How much of that do we practice on our planet? Divine love is a love that we have inside of us because it's the only thing we have to give away. That's all we can give away. Again, Patanjali, when you are steadfast, this is who Jesus was. This is who Rumi was. This is who Shams of Tabriz was. This is who Muhammad was. This is who Buddha was.
When you are steadfast, which means there's no ego, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's who St. Francis was. I've been to Assisi. Some of you were there with me. How many? Who was there? Look, so many of you were there with us last year, just a year ago, a little over a year ago. Do you remember the lecture in Assisi? When I stood there and St. Francis just entered my body, and literally I just lost it. I couldn't speak for 7, 8 minutes. It was overwhelming, the love. And everyone in the room just stood up and just held their hands out. You can reach this level of consciousness. There's a great Indian poet. His name was Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore. In 1927, he wrote a collection of poetry called the Gitanjali. This is what he said about the ego. I went out alone on my way to my tryst. But who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame. But I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. That's the ego. That's the part of us that we have to transcend. That's where we have to go within and recognize who we truly are. And who we are is divine love. When Jesus was asked, who is God? He said, God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in me, and I in him. It's just love. That's all Rumi is about. It's about love. It's about love for the beloved, love for the divine, love for that place within us that is our excitement. It is our God. It's what God is. Whatever excites you is the part of you that is saying, this is my Dharma, this is what I'm here for. And you know what it's always about? It's always about serving. The miser who loves his gold gets no love from the gold. There's no love in gold. The reason the miser is so exquisitely happy with his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for it. That's what he feels. When you feel so good about your Mercedes, or you feel so good about this ship, or you feel so good about your great paintings, as I read to you at the beginning of today, the Chinese versus the Byzantines. When you feel so great about these great accomplishments and all that you have, and all that you own, and all that you've defeated, and all the wins that you've had, it's nothing to do with any of that stuff external to you. It's the outpouring of love that you are giving to it. And you can't have love in your life, and you can't give it away unless that's what you have inside.